Hello, this is Chris Cooper, and a big welcome to the Business Elevation Show. It's brilliant to be back with you yet again. Another fantastic guest, as always. We've got Tessa White today, who I can't wait to reintroduce you to, because some of you will may know Tessa from interviews in the archive. Now, we're going to be talking about the five stages of career growth, which will be great. But before we do that, I want to just say, a big welcome to those of you listening to the show. Maybe people are listening for the first time. We've been around a little while, 14 years now. So I think we're one of the longest running business podcasts in the world, apparently. 614th episode today. And what we really care about and the way that this show has evolved is we care about doing business and our work in a way that really contributes very positively to the world and really impacts it in a very, very positive way. What we don't want to be doing is to be damaging the world's resources and exploiting people and polarizing. We want to help bring people together. And as business leaders, we have the opportunity to behave in ways that really add value to the world rather than take it away. We're in a pretty challenging time at the moment. And I hope to see and believe that the people who engage with this show are those who really want to get us back on track again. And my guest today, Tess, is one of those. If you've not listened to the show last week, I interviewed Lisa Bing, who I spoke to. She was in Brooklyn. I'm in the United Kingdom. And Lisa was talking to me in a very fun and engaging way about not only people, which we talk a lot about on this show, but about process and when sometimes the process needs to be focused on because that impacts the people. And the problem might not be the people, it might be the process. But if you're interested in listening to that and thinking that through, then do go and listen to that show in the archive. So today I want to introduce you again to Tessa. We're going to talk about the five stages of career growth. And if you care about your career, or maybe you've got children, maybe you've got children going through university, looking for work, or family or friends who have young people who care about career growth, or you're trying to navigate that yourself, then we're talking to one of the best people on the planet to have this conversation with right now. We're going to be talking about navigating your career and this really complex relationship that we have as individuals with the workplace. Now, my guest, Tessa White, she's known as the job doctor. She absolutely exploded on social media during the late 2020, during the COVID pandemic. She'll maybe share a bit about that, but her children put her onto TikTok, and suddenly she became this incredible phenomenon. And lots of people checking in with her about her wisdom around careers and the workplace. She had 20 years leading human resource functions with Fortune 50 fast companies and fast growth startups. As I mentioned, on TikTok, she has a big following. She's got over 1 million followers on social media. She was recognized on USA Today's list as one of the top speakers to watch in 2022. If you're interested in the unspoken truths behind career success, which was a fantastic first book, go and check her and Google her in my archive, because that first interview was fascinating. And what Tess is able to do is to really explain, being a HR professional, what's really going on, and how do you really understand what is happening in an organization. Because HR, for example, might not always be thinking about you first. They might be thinking about the organization first. And you need to understand some of these things to be able to navigate your career well. She also has a podcast, The Job Doctor is In, which is available on Spotify and Apple. And she's recently launched a free, no strings attached mentoring platform called Career RX. But what I particularly want to talk about today is the book she's writing. So her next book, we're getting a bit of advanced notification on this before others, because the book won't be launched till August 26th. But she's writing about the five stages of career growth, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to explore that with her too? She's also got an incredible role as a chair of the trustees of Utah State University. So we'll talk a little bit about that. 35,000, I believe, students at that university. So pretty pretty impressive. And I was delighted that she's actually a client of mine as well. She's part of a community called the Elevation Collective, which is helping, I believe, to bring exceptional people together who care about doing good in the world. So a big welcome to my guest today, to Tessa White.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I always love seeing how people introduce me because it doesn't feel like it's me you're talking about. So thank you. You made me sound great.
The thing is, though, I do know you, so
That's
you know,
true.
you're very humble. We've spent time together. We even spent time together in Africa this year, didn't we?
We did. It was
Yeah,
wonderful.
in Savo in Kenya. So yeah, I know you've got an amazing career. I just maybe what you could do is just share a little bit about what's been going on for you since we had that interview, which is well over 100 episodes ago now, on Unspoken Truths of Career Success. What's been happening in the world of Tessa White?
It's been the most interesting journey, Chris. As you know, I am an unintentional influencer. This was not something I planned to do. I didn't know where it would take me. It's just the idea that wanted to happen. And so since we talked, more doors have been opened. I've done a lot of television, morning television, and talking about the future of work. I have experimented with building a huge staff of people, and then I've decided I didn't like that and shrunk it back down to get back to the basics. And I've gotten into education. I talk about careers with young people all of the time and help them understand what careers are available and where different skill sets might take them. But now I actually get to shape the future of education in America in my role on the board of trustees. I work with the governor of Utah and the board of education to decide how can we make education worth it for young people, and how do we keep the costs down, and how do we keep up with the changes in the world. So I had no idea that this is where it would take me, but here I am doing things I never dreamed I would be doing.
It's amazing. And I think in the time that I've known you, through we talked about the job doctor, and I love you. Always love the look of your website and the way you position yourself on it. But it's just interesting where life has taken you, and now I just see how illuminated you are about this role with Utah State University. It
Mm-hmm.
just really feels like it's meant to be. You light up when you talk about it. So just tell us a little bit more.
I guess I light up because I think there's a disconnect between high school, college, or university, and I don't think we're giving our children good advice. I don't think they understand what careers are available to them, and I've always felt that way. I've always felt like they haven't had the guidance they need. But now, I mean, we're in the middle of this AI revolution, and jobs are going away quickly. At least in America, boy,
Yeah.
it's really rough right now. And being able to have a voice in both ends of the equation with people who are making decisions about careers, but also helping educational institutions make pivots, because we have an enrollment cliff coming with the number of people that are going to be college age. It's just going to drop off a cliff, and so universities will not survive unless they are able to adapt,
Yeah.
and only the ones that adapt the best will survive. And so it's just a dramatic shift that's going on, and I feel so lucky to be right in the middle of it because I feel quite passionate. One of the things we're doing with university right now is we're lessening the requirements in general education if it's not particularly relevant, so that people can get from university to jobs faster. And so that we're leading the nation in Utah on that initiative, and it's really been fun to work on that as well. So just a lot of changes brewing for people.
Yeah, we're seeing that in the United Kingdom too. I think we've there's been a massive drop. I can't remember the statistics in graduate vacancies that are available after university, and there's been quite a shift towards people doing apprenticeships over here. So they're going to doing studying but also working, but those have been dropping too. And it's hard to advise young people, isn't it? Should they go to university?
It is hard. And so we're seeing this huge shift to just certificates. Get a certificate in the area that you want to work and get you in the workforce as quickly as possible. Universities are not able to keep up with technology. by and large either, which is really interesting. We're trying to catch up with AI ourselves at university, which should, in theory, be the place you go for the latest and greatest, but they're falling behind.
Yeah.
And students are saying, I can't go into debt if getting a university degree is not going to help me get employed because there's so many graduates that can't then get employed. So, wow, there's just so much I could talk about there, but I think it's so important to be advising our young people on what they can do so that they can make money. It's not a time where you want to invest $100,000 in an education and find yourself without a job.
Yeah. Do you find too, as in some young people, I've well, I can think in my own immediate family, but whereas when I graduated, for me it was very much about finding that graduate placement role and then really evolving and developing my career. But a lot of young people seem to have seen their parents working incredibly hard at doing that and coming home stressed, and they see the role of influencers, Tessa,
Uh,
people
yes.
people being able to do work, drop shipping and things from beaches in Thailand, and they get all of these ideas that actually maybe a career is not such a good thing, and it's going to cost me $100,000, £60,000 or whatever it is to go and do it to university, and they're losing the energy for it.
Yes, they are. In fact, things are changing. Let me just tell you a story from my own life. My daughter, she's a nomad. She's calling from all different places of the world while she's doing her job, and she takes quite a bit of time off as well. And I said, unlimited time off, unlimited PTO plans aren't unlimited, right? You can't just take time off. And she's, no, no, it's unlimited. And she's traveling all over, and she had a meeting show up on her calendar, and she said, I don't know what this is about. This is from my manager. That's just a meeting tomorrow. And I thought, oh, she's going to get fired. She's going to get fired. And I said, well, you just call me after, let me help you, whatever it is. She calls me. I'm fully expecting she's going to get fired, and she says, guess what? I just got promoted to director of operations. And she literally travels all over the world to do her job. She's in a different place and city all the time. Work is changing. Work is
Mm,
changing, but there is an unrealistic expectation, I think, from our younger people, um, somewhat unrealistic about what they want and what they want to have and the speed at which they want to have it.
yeah,
They also have a lot of smart things going on too. I mean, they're bringing work life balance into the picture. That wasn't even a word when I was in the workplace. You just worked like a dog, and just till you
yeah,
burn out.
yeah.
And I don't think that's the right way either. But there are certainly challenges with this generation in terms of work expectations.
It's
Uh,
very, yeah, yeah. So I used to work for a big confectionery firm, and I would regularly work till 11 at night. I remember it was such a hard-working culture. I was in sales. It was very open-ended. It's never seemed to end. I enjoyed it, but it took over. And I asked a question recently to my wife about how did she feel about young doctors being on strike, and having a lower average pay than she would have had, inflation related to
mm-hmm.
her days. And she said, but Chris, they're working 37, 38 hours a week. I worked 100 hours a week, which I thought was
Yes. Mm-hmm.
a really interesting perspective.
Well, certainly young people
Okay.
today, most experts agree that they will have an average of 30 to 34 jobs in a year, in a lifetime. 30 to
Yeah.
34, Chris.
Wow.
Think about how many I had in my generation. I'm a proud Gen Xer. About 8 jobs in a lifetime, 8 career jobs, but 32. And so we have a generation who understands they have more control over what they want, and they're not afraid to move. That's a plus. It's also a minus because they tend to chase the green zone, or what they think is a green zone, more money, more this, more that. And it isn't necessarily leading to happiness, but at the same time, they certainly know that they have choices available to them, and they aren't afraid to pursue them.
Yeah. Yes. My 19-year-old son has now just landed another job. He's got two jobs, which he can
Mm-hmm.
run in parallel during the day, and his own business that he's running the rest of the time.
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
it is. It is. I'm proud of him because he's He's making it work, which is good.
Good for him.
So tell us a little bit about the platform that you built around the job doctor and the way you've been helping for a lot of years people to navigate their careers.
I just wanted to build the thing I wish I would have had in my own career. I was a single mom of three, just trying to make my way up at the career ladder, not knowing how much different career paths paid and not knowing what to do and kind of making mistakes along the way about my interactions with people or asking for raises or not asking for raises. And so I just built the platform I think people need. And I teach people how to navigate the complex work environments that they're in. Most of the conflict comes from manager interaction. Most people don't care for their managers, which is unfortunate. But people don't know how to address their manager if they're not happy. They don't know how to address career path discussions. They don't know how to disagree with somebody without getting canceled. And so a lot of the practice is about how can I teach people a framework by which they can have discussions that won't put their career at risk, but give them a voice in the workplace. I really believe that we have much more control over the experience we have at work than people think.
Mm.
I've just seen it from behind closed doors for years. I mean, I'll steal a line from Hamilton, but I was in the room where it happened. I got to see all of the conversations about your career behind closed doors, and I can see that so much of it is rooted in not communicating well. So I teach people how, the scripts to use, the techniques to use to have these difficult conversations and to work their way through the conflict that inevitably they're going to hit up against in the workplace.
So you're kind of helping people to understand the territory, are you?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
map as well.
Or yeah, here's what to expect. Here's
Yeah.
what you're going to hit up against. Here's how you deal with it. And then, I have sessions where I just let people ask their questions, just throw up, here's what's happening at work. I don't know what to do about this. And I talk to people about how to resolve it and how to think about it.
Mm.
And that, in fact, is what I do on the podcast. My podcast is talking to real people about real problems. And I think it helps everybody. So that's what I did. I just built the thing I needed myself for my own career, and it seems to have worked. And build it, and they will come.
Mm. In the Unspoken Truths,
Mm-hmm.
I remember I've read a lot of books since I read that one, but what I was surprised by was there were some things I'd not really thought about before, even though I've been through careers myself and over many years, and
Mm-hmm.
there was some insight that people don't necessarily know is part of the territory. And what are
Mm-hmm.
can you give an example of an unspoken truth that is important that people going into the career might not realize?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the first things in your career that you need to realize is that doing your job description better isn't what's going to be your key to success. Your job description was probably written by somebody in HR in a dark room right before they had to post it the next day. It's not the key to success. Working harder isn't the key to success. The key to success at work is making impact. And making impact is more than just doing the stuff that comes at you. It's I call it playing in the gap. It's finding out what the biggest problems are within your view and then solving them. And I find that the first job you have as a new employee is to sort out the job on paper from the real job because they're going to be very, very different. And how you win isn't going to be by following the job description. You've got to understand what people are, the problems that they're having in your department, in your world, and you need to get after it and you need to
Yeah.
solve them. And it's much harder to do that than just show up to work and and answer emails and take in, first thing that comes in, solve the problem just like you're taking ticket orders. But which is what we often do when we get tired and burned out. We just do what comes in and don't think about it. But if you think about it and really try and make impact, that's how you get ahead.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast. I think it was the boxing promoter Barry Hearn, I think, and he was saying that when he first started his career, and I think he'd worked in financial service or something first. What he did is he actually went into work wearing in a big company wearing a white suit,
Mm-hmm.
And he said,
Interesting.
and he said, I think the chief executive kind of, who are you? Kind of raised his eyes at him, but he said, everybody knew who I was.
I'll bet they did.
So I suppose in a different way, he kind of made an impact. People knew him, but you're right. People really care about you adding value, don't they?
Yeah, I
Really
tell people they should
important
visit.
thing.
They need to visit with everybody that anybody that interacts with their department. They need to visit with them and say, what are you expecting from this role? What do you need? What they tell you is going to be very different from what the job description says, but
Mm,
that will give you the key to how to win. Do it
yeah,
with your manager as well, but you have to refine it all the time. People's expectations change, problems emerge that weren't there before, but you got to stay, your ear has to stay close to the ground on those things, because if you can address those problems, you'll win.
yeah,
If you don't, you may become a ghost in your organization, which is why people leave. The deepest need of people is to feel like they're seen and heard. That's their deepest need. So making an impact solves lots of problems. It makes you feel good, but it also gets you promoted. So,
yeah. A little trick I had, which I think was really helpful for me, so I went on eventually ran divisions in a couple of companies, and what I did is I worked out who were all of the important people and all the people I needed to know, and I put all these circles on pieces of paper.
mm-hmm.
I rated the quality of my relationship with them from 1 to 10, and I kind of highlighted them, and I sort of strategically went round to make sure I knew everybody, but also tried to make a positive impact with each of them.
That's brilliant.
And that definitely helped because I would see, I might have somebody I was struggling to make an impact with, but some way, I might, I remember there was a particular IT director that I really, really struggled with, and I gave myself a 2 out of 10. But what was really interesting was when he eventually lost his job, it was me he contacted to see if I could give him a reference for somewhere else. Now I managed to sidestep the issue, I tried to build relationships and I found that quite helpful.
It's really important. So, really early in your career, you need to understand the importance of getting results or having impact. That's what builds momentum in your career. And then once you start to have that momentum, then people get really tripped up with communication, and they either avoid
Mhm.
conflict or they don't know how to have conflict the right way. And conflict is just a daily part of your job. So, a lot of what I teach and write about is conflict resolution.
Yeah. So you wrote this book about the unspoken truths of career success.
Hmm.
Why what's the distinction now and the importance of you writing about the 5 stages of career growth?
Well, it's actually it's funny. I actually had so much to say about the 5 stages of career growth in my first book that they made me cut about 100 pages from my
Ah.
first book. I just I really resonated with this concept of what are the 5 stages of career growth, and it seems to be one of the more popular chapters, and one of the things when I do keynotes that people want to understand and want to dive into is what are these 5 stages of career growth. So it's a natural outgrowth of the first book, but I think it's really useful. Nowhere have I ever seen has anybody outlined the skill sets that you need to have and how you move up in a company from a stage 1 to a stage 5.
Yes.
And there's very precise things that you need to do, and certain skill sets that you needed to have, for example, in a stage 1. If you still use that same skill set in a stage 2, you'll fail. So I just felt like people needed to understand how they can prepare for and enter into the next stage of growth in the most frictionless way possible for them.
That's really helpful because what does happen when you get promoted is often there are additional responsibilities and different skills needed.
Mm-hmm.
You're often not taught them, are you? You tend to be there because you did well in terms of having an impact in the previous job.
Yes. Well, for example, stage 1, let's just go there for a minute. Stage 1, when you win by doing what your manager says and doing it faster or better. It's pretty simple. And you
Right.
have to just ask your manager what to do. But in a stage 2, if you are always asking your manager what to do, you're going to fail. In
Yeah.
stage 2, it shifts, and all of a sudden, you need to be independent. Your manager may give you initiatives that need to be done and by, what date, But you have to figure out the in between. And if you're continually asking your manager, what do I do next? You're not going to progress. And likewise, when you go to a stage three, the rug gets pulled out from under you again because you just get good to being independent. But if you're independent at a stage three, you're toast because you're interdependent. You're working with other departments now.
Mm.
You're never going to be smart enough to do it by yourself. So you need to rely on other people and you need to collaborate well. And so, it continues like that through all of the five stages of growth. And you just need to understand what's coming so you can prepare and not do the same things in stage three that you did in two and wonder why your career stalled out.
Yeah. So are each of these stages, and we'll cover them in more detail in the second half because we've only got three minutes. But are each of these stages, is stage one a level entry job?
Yeah, yeah.
Does it matter?
Basically,
Does it matter whether you're a graduate, an apprentice, or going from school?
that's right.
Is it the same?
Yes, every stage has a kind of a compensation range that goes with it and certain titles that go with it. And I'll be
Okay.
happy after the break to outline those for you so people understand.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And stage five is basically when you're leading the organization, is it?
C-suite executive
Great.
or
Yeah.
CEO. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
That's right.
And just as we've got 2 minutes left, in today's workplace, what percentage of people are you finding actually want to go through the five stages?
There's a lot of people that want to just cruise. There are
Yeah.
many more people today that say, I want to be an individual contributor. I never want to be a manager, or I'm very happy with just being kind of at the middle level and not having the pressure that comes with the senior positions, which is
And
interesting.
it is another interesting. I remember I used to have a client who she was recruited specifically. Well, her aim was to recruit specifically women into big, C-suite type roles. Um, but she said, and there was a lot of frustration that there wasn't at that time that there wasn't women weren't really represented at the board level. But she said, Chris, I so struggle to find women who actually want to be there.
Mm. I think you find all kinds of people at all levels, but knowing what you want is an important part of your career journey. You
Mm,
want to build a career around what is important to you, not that everybody wants to grow or that that growing is the only thing that we can do in a career to be happy. I think there's a lot of
yeah.
paths.
So are we more aware now of the bigger picture around our whole life and being healthy and our well-being? Whereas certainly maybe when I was graduating, the focus was, to get up that career ladder.
It is not growth at all costs anymore. I do love that Gen Z has brought to the workplace. Um, let's right size the job for the life that you want. That's a really nice change.
Yeah. Which probably then makes it harder in terms of recruitment for certain levels.
It is, and it's harder to set their expectations around pay because their
Yes.
expectations around pay are still very
But
supersized.
they expect to earn what mum and dad earned and relatively,
That's
don't
right.
they?
Hmm.
Yeah. Without sometimes quite the pressure.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Is just
Hmm.
teaching what to expect at different levels, how much you can make, and what the choices are, so you can make an informed decision.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go to commercial break. After the commercial break, we'll go into those five stages of career growth so we understand them. We'll be back with you again in just a couple of minutes. Do join us shortly. Hi, this is Chris Cooper. You're listening to the Business Elevation Show, which is about good matters, and it certainly matters to understand well our career and our trajectory and our plans in terms of how far we want to go. So, Tessa, could you share? a bit about those five stages so that we can really kind of ground and understand what each of them are?
Sure. Okay. Let's see if I can do this in good summary form. Stage one, entry level. This is coordinators, specialists, that type of thing. That role typically pays between $25,000 and $45,000 a year. Um, that job is all about making sure that you follow your manager, right? You do what your manager says. This is the one place that you can ask questions. The thing that will surprise you is that crap runs downhill and a lot of things don't work at the lower levels. So
Mm.
if you think companies have it figured out, they don't. And you see it on full display. Stage two, it shifts because you're supposed to have a little bit more autonomy at this point. And your manager will define things for you, and you have to figure out the in between. So you're going to be managing projects and working with other people. This is a stage where independence is really important because if you rely on your manager to give you next steps and solve problems, you will be disappointed. You really have to take the initiative. Stage three is when you get to the mid level of your career. This is mid level managers, kind of mid level in your career. Typically in the U.S., it's 60,000 to roughly $90,000 a year. And these jobs are they're really difficult. First of all, if you're a mid manager sandwich, you know how hard this is. You have
Yeah.
pressure from the top saying get this done, and you have pressure from the bottom saying that's the dumbest idea I ever heard. And
Mm.
your job is to kind of sit in the middle. And so people at this stage find it really frustrating and difficult to get done what everybody wants. And the key to this job is interdependence. At this stage, you have to work well with other people. You're not smart enough, you don't know enough, and you have to be able to rely on outside people, outside agents, outside experts, and you have to work with other people in other departments. And if you continue to be independent, you will be considered that you're working in a silo and it
Yeah.
works against you. So then a stage four, everybody thinks they make it when they make it to a director, but you're not making it a director. Your job just changed. At a director level, you turn into a straight up salesperson because you are selling your ideas and you're trying to secure budget over and over and over again. So you sound like a
Mm.
broken record. But if you can't get people on board with your ideas, it's you will also fail because you have to sell them over and over. Inevitably, budget's going to get taken away from somebody, and you are always trying to fight for those resources that you need. At this stage, if you are not good at conflict, you'll wash out. You can no longer just play nice and think that you'll be okay. If you don't fight for what you need in terms of resources, which is conflict in and of itself, you wash out. And this is also a stage where you have to get your conflict changes because you have partnerships. You can't just throw people under the bus. It won't serve you. And then a stage five is really when you hit C-suite executive. And in this particular stage, people give you a hard time. They think that you're out of touch. We always hear they're so out of touch with their people. Well, it's
Mm.
because of the rule of 33. You're spending 33% of your time with boards of directors, business development opportunities, sometimes the press, 33% of your time with other colleagues, making sure you're not replicating initiatives and that you're on the same page. And then 33% of your time is spent with your team. This is also a stage where people are a bit afraid of you. And so you
Mm.
you risk people you risk getting yes men and yes women. And so you have to be really careful about communication and you have to make sure that you listen to your people and that you allow people to make mistakes. Otherwise, you got there because you were able to make decisions quickly, but you might make decisions too quickly if you don't involve other people. And so it has its own set of challenges around listening. So, in a nutshell, those are the five stages of growth. And I think at each level, you'll be surprised by certain things, which I outline in the book. And there are certain skill sets that will gain you entry into the next level. And if you're aware of them, you can prep for it and you can build those skill sets. But if you're not, you may get to a stage three and say, I don't understand why I'm not getting promoted, and find out that you're acting in a silo and you're acting too independent. And so,
Yes.
right? So you just need to understand what's coming. And in the book, I outline how your communication changes with your manager at each stage. And I talk about the things that will hold you back and the fatal flaws at each stage that you need to work on. and help people get their arms around what this journey is going to look like.
Mm. This is really helpful because I could see as when I could see as well, within an organization, if you're a training organization, that you could create a program for every one of these stages, couldn't you? A different one.
Well,
In a
honestly,
company.
that's how I came up with it, Chris. I was
Yeah.
so mad in my job as HR head that we couldn't, we hired people and thought they were the best thing ever. And then people would wash out. And I thought, why? Are we just not hiring correctly? How can we get this wrong so much? And I was trying to correlate exit data with, what was happening. And it took me years and years to do. And finally it clicked. I went, oh my gosh, there's the people that are in my top performers at each stage know how to do this certain thing, and the people that are washing out at that stage can't do that thing. And I realized this correlation, and that at each stage of your growth there were really critical skill sets that you needed to develop that would literally um, dictate whether you could be successful in a company or not.
Yeah.
And that's how the 5 stages of career growth were born, was just me just poring over data from my companies and trying to figure out why people were getting fired or why they left.
Yeah. And but actually, if it was made much more transparent and people really understood it,
Mm-hmm.
and they were given the support into each stage, gosh, I'm just thinking, I think back to how how could this could have helped so how and could help so many individuals because you jump from stage to stage and you don't realize that actually this is a stage now where I'm expected to be independent, and this is where I've got to be really independent and interdependent, and now I need to really understand I've got to become a salesperson, whether I like
Yeah.
like or not.
That,
I've not heard anybody say that before, actually. When you become a director, you're absolutely right. You've got to become a salesperson. You've got to become someone who can engage, haven't you? People and multitudes of them often.
and you have to be able to give elevator pitches about what you need and why you need it quickly. So you have to
Mm,
distill information because you're giving proposals to an executive team, and you have to be able to be very concise. If nobody told me that, I'd stumble into it.
yes.
And when I actually discovered this, there was a gentleman I had to fire. He was a senior director, so he was just on the verge of a five, in a four, and he was so likable, so like everybody loved this guy, and yet I had to fire him, and I was so upset that I had to because he was talented, he knew what he was doing, and everybody liked him, but he didn't know how to lobby for the resources he needed, and he didn't know how to say no. He was afraid of conflict,
Yeah.
and that lack of willingness to engage in those types of things is why I ultimately had to let him go. A very talented person who couldn't get what he needed for his team and couldn't get what he needed so that he had the resources to run the team appropriately. So really understanding that, I think he would have, somebody could have helped him get where he needed to go. But sometimes it's very hard to understand and then even articulate these things. So I've just done
Yes.
my best level job at being able to help people understand what those areas are that they need to work on.
Yes. I guess somebody with some of these areas, you could probably buddy up with somebody who maybe, if you're talented in one area, could be your right hand person who could do some of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're if you don't have to necessarily do it all yourself, do you?
Yeah, that's right. But instead, what happens, at least in the US, is that we have annual reviews where your manager says, "Oh, work on this thing. Don't, this is where you're strong. This is where you're not strong." And we use that as our template and our
Mm,
only guide as to how to grow. And it typically neglects these skill sets that are required for you to move up within a company. And
yeah.
so I'm just giving people a roadmap that will help them. And can you imagine if you lay that roadmap on top of whatever other feedback that a manager observes, that really jumpstarts your ability to get ahead and
Yes.
and allows you to move faster and more frictionless through what's a really complicated and sometimes dysfunctional corporate world.
Yes. I remember coaching someone who was had a strategic role. I guess he was probably probably level four, I think, if not just touching level four. But he had just had some 360-degree feedback, and he was really struggling with it. And when I looked at that feedback, what I realized, because I do a lot of profiling, is I realized that everybody who's giving him feedback was saying, you need to be more like me.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell the
Mm-hmm.
strengths of each person. You need to be more strategic. You need to be more detailed.
Uh-huh.
You need to be better with engaging t people on your team. And they're all just saying you need to be better. That you need to be like me. But actually, what you've done is you've outlined 5 stages there. And if you understand those stages, you could probably also understand what that person truly needs to be like.
Yeah, I think it gives you an opportunity to see what's coming.
Mm,
And so you can start to work on those stages. And embedded within those stages, there's two gateway skills. The first one is what we talked about at the beginning of the show, which is you have to understand that getting results, having impact is the price of entry. And it only gets more serious about that as you rise. But the second gateway skill is learning how to get comfortable with conflict. Because if you can't get comfortable with conflict or you think it's a bad thing, you will not be successful.
yeah.
Conflict is just built in. From the moment you get your offer letter, there's a little conflict, on your pay negotiation,
Yeah.
and it always exists. And especially the higher you go, you hit that stage 4 if you can't do it. If you don't know how to address hard things, you'll wash out in a company. And I think we're at a time where people, I call it we're in a swipe right, swipe left world. And people would just as soon swipe left and leave a company than they would want to address a conflict.
Mm,
And I teach people that conflict isn't bad. There is good conflict and how to have good conflict in a way that makes it feel safe for the people that you're talking to. And I think that's really, really important because what we tend to do is either go silent and not say anything and leave. Quiet always leads to quit, or we we go, scorched earth, and you know, and that doesn't work either. And so I try and teach people how to get to that middle ground where people feel listened to and feel like you can bring up something that might be a little bit difficult and still feel safe doing so.
yes. 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 And I guess unless you understand that, it would be quite easy if you find yourself in conflict situations and towards you for people to start feeling like they're a victim.
And not even just they feel attacked.
Yeah.
People feel so attacked. I mean, just take the incidents in the United States this last week. We can't even talk about what's happening with shootings because everybody's on such polarized opposite ends of the spectrum. And that shows up in the workplace too. We go very polar, very extreme in how we talk through conflict. And there are tools and ways to teach people to do this better. I teach people to assume good intent in the other, which is harder than it used to be to assume good intent. And then little phrases that you can use, like, is that what you intended? That would be one of the phrases I teach in one of my communication models that help people address a conflict without pointing their finger at somebody to say you're
Mm.
bad, because
Yeah.
we imply you're bad when we
Yes.
have these kinds of conflicts. Whether it's, we get that with employees saying, companies are taking advantage of us. That's what quiet quitting is employees saying, I'm only going to give you as much as I want to and no more, no less, because you take advantage of me. And so so we're inherent in the workplace is already this built-in adversarial relationship around you're bad and I'm good.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is create partnerships. And at stage 3, you have to start developing partnerships and understand how to talk like a partner and not like an enemy. And whether it's about your budget or whether it's about a raise or anything else. And that's what I teach in those 5 stages of career growth.
Wow. So the quiet quitting, that's interesting. This is where people keep their head down, is it? And go, and they're giving engagement levels go down. They're just doing enough.
They do just what they feel like is fair for the amount of money that they're paid, no more, no
Yeah.
less.
Yeah.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a real challenge. Um, so are there any of these stages that are particularly difficult for people where's the most problems can occur in transitioning from one to another?
I think stage 3 is probably the hardest. That's a good question. They all have their challenges, but I think stage three is difficult because at a stage 3, you're actually expected to get a lot of stuff over the finish line. You're expected to you're given a lot of responsibility to do things you may not know how to do, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And we make a lot of mistakes. And so I think that's a very hard stage to be in, especially if you're hard on yourself, because making mistakes are perceived as, being, well, if somebody has to correct you in today's world, especially the younger you go, if you go down to a Gen Z, you have to be so careful the way that you talk. There's a sensitivity there, and people
Mm.
would just as soon leave as to be under a performance plan. And so I try to teach in this stage that managers need to talk more to their people, not less. The more they talk, the more it feels like coaching. The less they talk, then when they do bring something up, it feels punitive.
Yeah.
And so you actually help your people by talking more about the good things and the bad things and creating safety for your people when you bring up something that isn't working. But
Mm.
if you are a manager who avoids conflict, like many, if not most managers, most people, I shouldn't say managers, just people in general avoid conflict, then by the time you bring it up, it is going to feel punitive.
Yeah.
So, I asked my followers, I said, how many of you um, would bring up a problem you have with a company? How many of you would dare say something? 94%, Chris, said that they would leave before they would bring something up.
Really.
94%. So it tells you about this aversion to conflict that exists, and it is on full force right now. And people will leave before they will bring things up, and I think it's because we often don't know how, and because we're so bad at communication right now. We're just in a conflict kind of world, and I don't think our younger people have really learned how to address conflict face to face. It's a swipe
Mm.
left, swipe right world for them.
Mm.
So that to me is a stage that we can do a lot of work to help each other. And it's also a stage where you can learn to ask, how am I doing along the way? In quick, I call them quick validates. I give people quick validates or phrases that they can use to check in and see how they're doing. When they hear something that they think, there's something just off about what my manager said, I don't think they're happy with me, instead of creating the narrative in their head that everything's bad and then
Yes.
leaving.
Yes.
Because what people do, if they're having 30 to 32 jobs in a lifetime now, what they're doing, Chris, is they're leaving and expecting it to be different. And what they're going to find
Mm.
is that the problem follows them.
Yeah.
If you didn't create work life balance for yourself in one job, you're not going to automatically do it in another. And the same is true if you couldn't address conflict in one job, you're not magically going to be somebody who can address conflict in another job. And so I teach people, if you learn the skill sets while you're in a stage 3, that will help you be successful in vetting out what's really going on. You might be able to save your job. You might be able to get a promotion. You might be able to work through the conflict and then be able to continue growing in that organization for a while. And when you leave companies, you have to give 20% extra time, right? You have to prove yourself all over again. And so we have a whole bunch of young people who go from job to job and have to prove themselves all over again and find themselves unhappy again and then continue to move
Yeah.
and move.
Yeah. How do you advise people who today in terms of there's a lot of it feels at the moment like we're in it can feel like we're in a quite a dark time. Media is very negative. You mentioned Charlie Kirk you were referring to, who was
Mm-hmm.
shot in Utah
Yes.
in the last couple of weeks for people who are listening to this from overseas. It feels like there's an awful lot going on. There's a lot of polarized thought and views and perceptions. But of course, people are taking all of that stress and there's some socio-economic issues and people are worried about the planet. And how do you, as somebody going through these stages when you're engaging with people, how do you lift yourself to be able to enable you to do what you need to do in that role, which can be significant, and how do you lift others who might be feeling, stressed and anxious just coming into work from everything else that's going on, never mind the job.
Well, I don't know all the answers to this, Chris, because I'm muddling around in it myself. But I will tell you that one thing I have learned is that um, we tend to move away from people and connection. That tends to be the go-to right now, as we move away from connection, and that hurts us. Moving to connection helps us. And so For me, I have found being on social media too much makes me soul sick. This I have established, and I'm a social
Yeah.
media influencer, and I'll say
Yeah.
that. Um, I simply put down, for me, I put down my phone and I try and make connections with people. I try to talk with people and just find out more about who they are. And I find that when I'm not focused on the labels of people, and whether it's, the negative labels of manager or, out of touch CEO, the labels that we sometimes put on people, and I just get to know people as individuals, that I do so much better. And that if I can focus on just what's happening in my own community, my own little world, and focus on connection, I do much better.
Mm.
Um, I think I think this whole idea of being in a digital world where we swipe left and swipe right and we ghost people when we get sick of them, I think it shows up in the workplace,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not helping, and it's why people will leave companies, or why they won't engage, or why we get quiet quitting on Monday. So the antidote to my, I believe, is connection, and connection requires us to talk to other people and resolve conflict at times. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
want to resolve things when you care about somebody. I do know that. And so the more time I spend with people, the more I care, the more I'm willing to work through challenges and bring up hard things.
Mm.
And so bringing the relationship back into, and connection back into work, I think, is pretty important.
Mm. Just a, we you're very, I'm delighted you're part of the Elevation Collective community, which is our community of people who are doing some exceptional things out there. But we provided within that there's connection, isn't there? And there's community. Is it helpful for people to consider, joining groups that actually help to lift them and help them to learn that might be outside of the workplace or within the workplace?
Yeah, I actually interviewed an author about this last week on my own podcast. And the science is saying that that it is important that we find the passion, and that we do more things to make a difference, or that we feel, even if it's like, for me it's pottery, go do that thing. And when we have a more full sense of living our passion, and connecting with other people that do that, that it exponentially improves our life. So it sounds super soft and gushy, and even a little bit silly to say, you got to connect and you've got to do good things and be with other good people. But it actually is incredibly helpful, and has a scientific backing that it can help us in a world where we are moving away from it, and we are moving into isolation more, which is not serving us.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we're coming to the end of the interview now. So I wonder, do you have a sort of final message that you'd like to leave us with?
Oh my gosh, I don't know how to leave a final message. I don't know. I guess I would just say to people, as it relates to work, your ability to speak up for what you need, and do it in a way that does not that assumes good intent in other people, will directly correlate with your experience in the workplace. You will be able to get promoted quicker, be trusted more, and have a better experience if you can learn the art of speaking up and creating strong partnerships.
Mm.
So you have more control than you think. I guess that's my parting message, because we've talked about some hard things too, some things that are really difficult about the workplace. I can't take difficult out of workplace, but what I can do is say you have more control than you think.
Thank you. Well, Tessa, that's been absolutely brilliant talking to you today. And I love, I loved your first book, The Unspoken Truths for Career Success. People can buy that. It was different. It was different because it was the inside perspective from someone who'd worked at a very senior levels in HR. So you saw the other side as well as the perspective of being an employee. And also today it's been really helpful just starting to think through that map of the 5 stages of career growth and realizing that actually we need to behave differently in each of them and build different skills to each. So, really great. I know that book's going to be August 26th, going to be a little while ago. We'll let people know when that book's available and coming out. But on next week's show, we have an interview with Tom Eddington and Jim Garrison. It's on the State of the World Forum, which is an event which is being held in Washington, D.C. in December. You'll be able to listen to that online, or travel to Washington for it. But I interviewed Jim Garrison, who was a very close friend of Mikhail Gorbachev, and they created the State of the World Forum, which was an incredible global conference back in the early sort of 2000s sort of time together. But they're relaunching that, and it's needed because our consciousness needs to shift to move our thinking to a place that can deal with all these complex problems that we've got. So you'll hear us talk about next week. We'll talk about the kind of state of the world. We'll talk about human intelligence, AI. We'll talk about also talk about nature, the intelligence and learning from nature, and also something called cosmic intelligence. I'll let you join the show to listen to it. But I've pre-recorded that because I have an event next week, and it was fantastic. And I tell you, Jim Garrison and Tom Eddington are two super smart people that you want to listen to and you can really, really learn from. So do join that next week, and go and check out thejobdoctor.com. Any social media for Job Doctor Tessa. You can check that out. Listen to some of Tessa's videos. Catch her on TikTok. But important to navigate and learn this career journey if you're on it. So if you know any young people, people going through that stage, do share that with this interview with them. Let's help them. Let's help them get off onto the right foot. So look forward to speaking to you again all shortly. Any questions or comments? I'm Chris Cooper, chriscooper.co.uk. You can also check me out on social media as well. Join me in places like LinkedIn. So do take care, everybody, and we're back again shortly for another week.